Yotere, yotere, ayo, ayo, yotere. Yotere, yotere, ayo, ayo, yotere. Yotere, yotere, ayo, ayo, yotere. Hello, my friends. Sio atakeote. Hello, beloved. Reliste atsenata. Happy new moon to you. And to me, and to we, and to all of us in between. Hey? Gosh. It's the after party for Mars Day Mantra here for the moon. Here as it rises. We will pull some cards to see what the moon has to offer us, and also some integrative breath work. But I also think there's some important things to note as far as the alignments of all of these planets and what that means for us in these states of blooming and changes. Welcome. Hello, my friends. Yotere, yotere. Yotere. Welcome, my friends. New moon in Aquarius, which in Western astrology, Aquarius would translate in indigenous astrology to the mirror, or the flower, or the red bird in the storm. And if you consider the ways in which birds fly on the winds, both of these, from Telegi or Cherokee to Meshika astrology, are very much related in that. The mirror of beauty is also the flowers of life and death that we see in life and in waking or in dream. The reflection of perspective from our inner eye to the outside world, and also the ways in which we ride the waves of any thought pattern or any transformative mode, any migratory mode. Migration is natural. Invasion is not. Invasion is a colonial construct. And I think many of us are going to find ourselves both cleansing and releasing these sort of outdated or old thought patterns or systems in great ways. Aquarius is, this very interesting, mysterious, and also often associated with technological sort of advancement or evolutionary framework in the ways in which we move or understand. It is not just an air sign by any means. It is also very much rooted in the root cause of things, in the southern node of fire, of creativity, as well as like clean slate innocence, so to speak. And that's something that Venus's placement in Virgo, I think, will very much lean into. And much like we talked about in the solar sun translations, Venus and Leo, not just as the star, but as the morning star, which would be Venus. So Leo not just as the wolf or the star, but as the morning star, which would thus lead us more to Venus than just fiery counterparts like Mars, which is also squaring Venus, or has squared Venus, and created many a friction within that. Mars is also super overlaid with Ceres, which is very much so like a bit of a nurturing aspect, not just like caring for or bandaging warriors, and I think not just the to get things done and get business moving, but the ways in which we take care of ourselves before and after hard work is done. The moment of is never just that moment, and when we can expand our consciousness or awareness around the preparatory and on the rehabilitative aspects of that energy, then we expand the moment and we engage in deeper preparations beyond just being ready to fight or to fly, just beyond fight or flight. And that's, very interesting too, considering that in the past years we have come to understand that there's much more nuance to the nervous system, and its responses in triggering or in trauma that far exceeds just fight or flight as a mechanism. This is why we also have freeze or fawn now, comparatively to previously thinking that it was just one or the other. Now we have much more to play with, and I think that's something that will expand greatly in all directions, so that we can see beyond the previous metrics of measurements that we have used to engage thus far. Saturn is also in retrograde, and Uranus also very much plays with and is counterpart to these Aquarian energies, and Uranus is also in retrograde. And so consider that is not an obstacle to be overcome as much as it is sort of an investigative opportunity to reframe, to reframe ideas, to look at things within an ingenuity. And that, again, southern node, for like the root of the flame, is not just innocence but our capacity for creativity. When we hear innocence, we often think of like untouched, unscathed, unjaded, and ingenuity requires some experience, for sure, some experience to be able to synthesize, um, but is also experiential in a way that cannot be jaded, and that is not operating from those jaded systems. So um, in the blooming of the flower and the reflection of the mirror, and in the storm coming and the flight or path of flight taken in migration of transference of energy, consider um, how much old thoughts or outdated thought patterns or outdated systems are coming into play with this new moon, are being sort of shed light upon, and also given a new moon, a blank slate, a dark night, to be able to conjure, to imagine, much like, in dreaming or in meditation, we have this sort of blank slate behind the eyes that still is able to receive so much understanding in frequency, in sound, in light, in imagination, in the mind's eye and its projection toward. That is a very mirror of sight. Even the eye operates very much kind of like the eye of a camera, and sort of absorbs and refracts this information, and that neurologically also happens within the brain, projecting light outwards from very literally the mind's eye, because the third eye, or the pineal gland, is also very much an organ that has the same, rods and cones that our eyes do as far as perception or being able to perceive or absorb light. And so there's an inner light that is more directive than the external light, and that is what this new moon is offering space for. Not the distraction of external lights, but to hone in on just how bright and brilliant the inner light can be. And that is, beyond the thought of lost innocence, be an ability to capture the spark, the source spark of what has made us all that we have become and all that we aim to be. It is, very much what people call, inner child in so many ways. Consider also, old patterns and old thoughts or outdated systems of thought, within and yes, without. The world is changing perpetually. There's new laws, new modes, new technology, new rhymes and reasons to everything. New systems, new operating systems. I can't say I know exactly when, but I'm willing to bet there's some new technology or some new phone, or when does Apple always release its new freaking phones, right? Um, or those updates that always come for our phones. I feel like I've been getting those update things, those update freaking notifications a lot lately too, and so right on time because it is a new operating system peeking its head through, blooming into wherever it is we'll be moving forward. Thank you so much for being here. If you are from our little TikTok party, welcome, welcome. Um, Welcome to a new room to channel through for clear collective sight, for clear collective conjuring. So new operating systems, very much a happy place for Aquarius. The new, ingenious, maybe even ahead of its times kind of reasoning and thinking. A new understanding of evolutionary framework, and quite honestly, even biologically, and a deeper understanding of that native evolutionary framework that exists within us, as far as thought patterns and where they come from, as far as memories and where they are rooted to. Because even, previous science would say the hippocampus is where all the memories are stored, and da 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 da. But memories are stored in more than just the hippocampus. Memory is also very much stored in the blood, in the body, in the bone. And the hippocampus is more so the organizational tool for collaborating, or I guess compartmentalizing too in some way, what those memories mean, why, and how they came to be. And so even in that, the understanding of the framework of the mind has evolved, has changed. The understanding of our own internal galaxies, as well as the galaxies about us, has very much changed. There's dozens and dozens of new moons and new understandings of, even Three Eye Atlas as a fossil, really, rather than just aliens. Um, Although I guess you could expand that word to be alien to our understanding now is actually perhaps more native to the universal understanding in its fossilized framework. Um, Pluto's also retrograde, so the new moon in Aquarius with Pluto, I think, is very much like when you, what is it called when it's like in testing mode, like in beta mode, I guess, in testing mode for any new technology. It's very much in process, in progress, in process, a little bit of both, where there's trials to be had, there's a test mode, not so as to eliminate failures, but so as to eliminate places that need more strength or more foundation to ensure success. There is no such thing as like a failed test mode. It's meant to illuminate soft spots, quote unquote weaknesses, so as to really be able to finesse and to organize that system in a better framework. Opposing the moon, and Pluto is the sun and Jupiter, because that is what makes a new moon. Opposing this is the sun and Jupiter very much together in cahoots, although I don't necessarily think they are on the same page. The sun in Leo, Jupiter in Leo, very much illuminates what doesn't work, like we said, in sort of test mode and in process, illuminating outdated frameworks, or assisting to shed some light on those outdated frameworks. But the new moon's responsibility is to be ingenious and creative with the possibilities and potentialities that are then exposed. But Jupiter, and any perhaps residual Capricornian energy that the moon has carried over, as well as Uranus retrogrades that are very much innervated in these Aquarian understandings, um, a mirror, if you will, for these understandings, I think very much will be uncomfortable with changes and upgrades to frameworks. Like after so many upgrades in the iOS system, there's phones that will no longer work, or there's absolutely like apps that you can no longer use if you do not update to a certain framework. I feel like that's very much Jupiter and the Sun. Is there? They're like, well, don't fix what's not broken. Why are we going to change something that's been working for us for years? This is how it was always done. Da 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 da. And that is a very jaded and sort of, again, the youthful, creative root seed of the flame or southern direction, and the north, like jaded elder, very much like these dang kids get off my lawn kind of characteristic that Jupiter and the Sun, I think, kind of offer in thrusting back at any new ideas that Aquarius might have. And within, that's very much, internal doubt. That's very much not considering new possibilities within the self because it's something that's simply too new to you or that you haven't done before, but that doesn't mean that it cannot be done at all. I do think there's a lot of shifts and changes that will that will allow us the opportunity to surprise ourselves in the ways in which we can grow or change. And that thrusting back is like pressure upon pressure that feels maybe at times like a rock in a hard place, right? But again, I think that's maybe the wrong metric. If we're measuring only on one plane and that singular metric isn't working, then we must look for another way through, another way out, another way up and above. Much like we can consider even when people say, hitting rock bottom is a phrase used to illustrate the worst case scenario, right? But hitting rock bottom for many can also be the best thing that's ever happened, because the only way out then is up. The only way out is through a different axis of travel. And I think in so many ways, this polarity, planetary polarity, is our understanding of is a deeper understanding of not just pain, but the pressures against, and that is will, that is conviction, that is motivation that puts pressure upon. And we're seeing that very much so in battles of politics, right? Where there's very much this separatism and this polarity of party, but the pressures against are very much something that comes from conviction to those that are speaking up, or comes from control or being controlled from those that are too afraid to speak up. So the ways in which we can understand that discomfort in a deeper way. It reminds me of something that a friend of mine actually said when it comes to instances of pain is, the brain will recognize it, and anxiety and anticipation will heighten that sense, thus making it more excruciating, more painful. And what they told me, and what I've heard them tell others, is that you tell your mind that it's just pressure, and that it's just pressure against. And that sort of cessates the pressure, the pressure against, so that the will and the motivation and the conviction can thus rise to the surface and exist as a frequency against. This is also something that I very much learned in tattooing my face, or tattooing my chin, because there's so much bone, right? That very much is a resonator. And it was very difficult. It's very difficult. Totally worth it. I learned so much about myself. But I kind of hummed through the whole thing, and I realized that when I was humming, that I was, in kind of like a very low, like I suppose through the whole thing, um, that frequency, that internal frequency of my hum, thus met the vibration of the machine in such a way that it was no longer such a heavy pressure against me, and now I was thus the pressure against it. And it made the whole thing so much more pleasurable, so much more attainable, so much more liberating in experience, and was able to come fully out of it and see myself as I am and step into myself as I was meant to be. And so perhaps that instance, that experience, is also something that y'all can resonate with, if not in literal terms, in very much the allegorical or metaphysical terms of that experience. And so we pull some cards to see what this moon has to offer in this new understanding of framework, in expanding our perspective and perhaps giving us more agency in these brittle thought forms falling away, and our ability to create new systems that will be much stronger in their stay. Perhaps maybe even able to find more balance, more symmetry in the thoughts that we think and the ways in which we think them, in the thoughts that we think and the ways in which we see them. That is the symmetry of the mirror's reflection and the ability to bloom something new entirely and carry it to a new paradigm. For those of you that are watching, if you would like a reading, you are more than welcome to book one with me. After I post them, I always add in the description all of my resources and offerings, and you can absolutely book a general reading with me, or an energy body reading with me, or even the opportunity to take that energy body reading and apply that to a guided meditation led through the cards. But today and now is for the collective. And this is perhaps also a really great opportunity to cessate that anticipation and, the selfishness even that overrides us into me, and be able to see that there are messages waiting for us all around us in relationship with everything. All right, my friends. All right. Let us take 3 deep breaths together. An eternal and timeless breath as a vehicle through and beyond. All I ask of you is to open your body to the fullest breath that you can find, and to open your awareness to any sensations that may arise. Perhaps that is all that is needed to expand in perspective. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Okay, clearing for one. Clearing for one. And more stabilizing, but for sure there's like the rigidity of anticipation, the sort of shaky uneasiness of unsureness, and that, is very organic for big changes, very organic for pivotal times, for passing through thresholds. However, it does not have to be. This is the difference between walking into a room like so afraid that everybody's staring at you, and walking into a room like you know your presence, and that you know you belong there, and that you know that you have something to offer there. Whether or not, belong is even like a weird word to use, but the like when we walk into an interview, we like and like, all right, got this, open the door, versus like, oh no, what's gonna go wrong, and like kind of shaky ankles as we open the door. um there's potentiality for both, and the shaky ankles can be transformed into a stable and firm stance that is able to hold you upright, which with much more conviction rather than confidence. And given so much in Leo, this is something that like really just needs to be like rooted, right? Confidence is a very fragile thing. This is why the ego is so fragile. The ego loves confidence. Um, but confidence is like stage glass. It is made to be broken. It is very thin, it is very transparent, it is not sustainable. Conviction, however, is the root of all things, like the root of and causal point of all things. This is like deep knowing, that is able to proceed and persist in the face of doubt. And especially in the face of doubt of observance, yes, but there is no inner doubt when you know very deeply your convictions and your will, or your motivations for your intent for any given thing. And any difficult thing that I've done, it is that much harder when I do not have, it is impossibly harder when I do not have the motivation, or when I do not have like a deep sense of like, but this is why I need to do this. This is why I saw this. This is, I have to bring this vision to life. Confidence is like, I have to do this because other people will love me for it. I have to do this because that'll make me popular. I have to do this because people will perceive me differently. Da 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 da. That's all very weighty and on shaky legs. Whereas conviction is like firm, strong thighs that can squat for days. You know what I mean? Let's see. Interesting. All right. Okay. I don't necessarily always start here, but Queen of Diamonds, Four of Clubs, Jack of Diamonds, which is lovely, which is super lovely. This is also where we become maybe the fatherly figure of our own lifetimes. This is where we, step into the kind of provider, regenerator, protector of our own energy, our own frequency. Because the Queen of Diamonds is very much here, and if you consider like mountains on either side, valley on the inside, right? Mountains on either side, valley on the inside. This is the reservoir, the resonator. This is like left leg, right leg, hips. And the hips as this cup of energy. The hips as this like dome, this chalice of potent energy, of potent frequency, and of what we mean to do with it. This is also why trauma gets stored in the hips. Quite honestly, that's also why so many battles in the Americas have been had in valleys. because it serves as a basin that ultimately traps the souls there, um, and sort of reverberates that frequency, which is why so many battlefields are deemed very spiritually active places. And so consider the leg that follows is trusting and is also full of excitation. You know, like mama duck and baby duck. Wherever mama duck goes, the other duck follows. And when we are aware of where it is that we are going, because we are fully invested in our strength, our conviction, our conviction, maybe more so than strength even, um, because it's not brute force, it's deep knowing. This is like intuitive leading, like walking forth because we know, stepping through a room because we know we are presence. You know, everybody's seen somebody that walks into a room, some like babelicious, that walks into a room and everybody looks and everybody stares because they walk through with their heart raised, their chin raised, and like they know their value, they know their worth, they know their purpose, and thus everybody follows. This is the inner deity, inner goddess, or inner mothering, even, that guides. And this is our jovial youthfulness that is willing to see that through, for capacity for creation, for capacity for creativity, for capacity for wonderment, for whimsy, even. Um, like, if this is the whimsy, then this is, who plans the picnic. Who plans a picnic, who speaks to the fairies, and who is able to use that imagination to see greatly through that experience in those portals. This is the way we hold that experience, the way we value that experience, the altar even of the body in that experience that is able to hold that frequency, that is able to resonate, resound that frequency. The Seven of Diamonds is the bottom of the deck, and that is very much the seeds that we sow in these frameworks. It is, yes, a very earth-ridden sign, but thoughts also become form, become things in the body and in the mind. This is why trauma, again, rests in the hips in so many ways, shapes, and forms, why the body remembers these things, why the bones remember these things. And so what thoughts have we seeded and now are perhaps in greater recognition or regret of reaping, the reaping of what we've sown? These are these either blockages or seeds of stagnation, but also seeds that we can plant and seeds that we can grow. Again, the flower and the blooming, that is the ingenious of Aquarian nature. Um, the valley is fertile land for that as well. Like, if you consider water runoff from mountains, this is how we get lakes. This is how we get, very supple plains. And so the body is also very much that. What are we holding in our thighs? What are we holding in our direction? What are we holding on our shoulders that trickles down into the core of the body? And what does it allow to grow? Has it only been seeded with doubt and worry and grasping for the past, or grasping for what has been done before, trying to emulate, trying to replicate, comparison even, trying to replicate and emulate things that we've compared ourselves to, rather than allowing ourselves to fully open and try something our way, try something altogether new, allow ourselves to play this game of life by our own terms and by our own rules. There's only one 7 here. 7 is a blessing. 2 7s is a challenge. 3 7s is like a blessing from all directions, confirmation from ancestors. in a lot of ways too. I think it's, again, that comparison, too much or not enough. In what ways have you told yourself you're not enough? In what ways have you told yourself you're too much? Your hips remember that, your core, your sacrum remembers that, and so it constricts, it resists when it really just needs to expand. That is the only rock and hard place that we are in between, is what we think we need to be doing, what we feel we ought to be doing, but none of those are convictions built within us. They are seed sown from perspectives of others, from outdated systems, like in a very literal way, like needing to be a mother and needing to have babies. Like that feels like a rock and a hard place for a lot of people because that wasn't their fucking idea to begin with. But also, the ways in which we view that can transform in many ways too. Like being a plant parent, being a pet parent, being a dope ass aunt or uncle, kind of what have you, are ways in which we are still nurturers of the zeitgeist, nurturers of the times, nurturers of the youth, but it looks different. And this is where, rather than too much or not enough, we are in fact fertile ground for growth nonetheless, and we are still very much blooming. Um, or the ways in which, like conversely, the ways in which like leading with femininity has been shunned or shamed, um, the ways in which we hold that or compress that or force that or constrict that, very literally, even like the body will reject partnership or will tense um, at receiving, because that is still so ruled by thoughts that are not of our own sowing, by roots that are not of our own sowing. That is, what did I say in the beginning? It is an invasive species. Invasion is not natural, but migration of thought, of transference of these thoughts, and being able to transfer your own thoughts and to be able to transfer meaning in between and build bridges in between, or use those as nodal points to then be able to fill your own story in between, is very much the way to move forth through this, the way to open space, the way to dilate space, the way to expand in what feels like a test or a trap. I said something about inner light earlier too, and if you consider even, these high calling solid diamonds as blinders on the eyes, on perspective, when in reality this four of clubs is, fiery illumination, and is asking asking for you to see it from a different perspective so that you can actually perceive the light, like what do they say, like get to higher ground so that you can see more of what's around. It's kind of like that. Granted, this is, again, basin, so it's not necessarily higher ground, but when we're able to see from the very tops and the outskirts of these blinders, then we are able to see from a greater degree of perspective, and thus those lights illuminate the whole village. It's kind of like one of my favorite things about this city, about my city, is the way that it looks at night from the sky. Like if you're flying in and you see the fucking Sears Tower and the lake and everything is just, it's so ethereal from that perspective. And for sure, in the midst of it, when you're on the ground, when you're a rat in the city, it looks very different. And that is exactly the means by which I mean see it from a different perspective. Because what weighs heavy on you now is asking you to see it from a different point of view so that you can really take in the light that it's giving off, or that it's offering to you. Likewise, the ways in which we view these moons, these dark moons, and You know, the full moons are the ones for conjuring. I get my period on a full moon, so I'm more powerful than you. New moons are potent. New moons are ingenious. New moons are times to sow new ideas in a very real way. But everybody in material perspective really just puts weight into full, while also desperate for fulfillment. When in actuality, maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the new moon is an empty basket waiting for you to fill it with all of your wealth, all of your rich perspective, rather than just cutting away. And maybe the full moon, maybe the full moon, maybe the full moon is meant for something else entirely. At times, there is more than one singular truth to be had. And so, what is that truth to you? What is its converse? What is its synthesis? And what new dreams can bloom from that kind of understanding? Interesting, interesting. I think in a lot of ways too, this Queen of Diamonds and this Jack of Diamonds around this Four of Clubs can also be the ways in which we deeply guard or protect our space in such a way that it has become a sort of long lost place. You know, after so long of being so jaded that you won't entertain anything, like I think we forget what experience feels like at all. And so, are those guards at your door, or are they keeping you in a prison of your own thought? Two things can be true at once. And perhaps there's times where they are very much your guardians. This Queen and this Jack, very much your guardians at the door. And with Venus and Virgo, very much so. Like, is this like the vaginal something or other kept imprisoned by these gods? Or are we able to utilize those strengths to allow us to thrust forward in life, to thrust back in life, and be able to play, be able to explore, be able to move with more confidence, with more, not just confidence, with more conviction, with more understanding, with more knowing in the back of our mind that we are protected, that we are guided, than to be filled in the back of the mind with doubt, or filled in the back of the mind with, well, but this happened before, so it must happen again. Well, this is how it went on before, so that must be how it happens again. That's not to say that pattern recognition isn't a strong suit, but sometimes we jump the gun on that, and it becomes more of a pattern of assumption than it is about pattern recognition. And that assumption and that anticipation very much exacerbates any circumstance where we could find more ease and more solace. All right, little spirit bridge from the mountains to the valley. Because I read cartomancy, but I also read tarot, and they work together very well, like time and space. You are the presence, not the pressure. right, my friends? Let's use the breath as a guiding light and vehicle. Again, all I ask is that you open your breath, your body, to the fullest breath that you can find, and you open your awareness to any sensations that may arise. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Ooh, okay. Okay. Burst of light in the horizon. Very much like a mushroom cloud. Because the light may be far, but the streams and the beams from the light also appear very close, and the pressure of that light is also very palpable. It's also something that very much surrounds. I think in a very real way, they can go many ways. The internal light of self and the frequency that it emits, especially if we feel particularly misunderstood, which quite honestly I think Western astrology fails to understand Aquarius in its depth and in its nuance entirely, because it doesn't even understand Western astrology, and its pop astrology doesn't even understand Aquarius and its element outright, let alone in totality. But I also think that is the ways in which even that which is distant from us becomes very vivid and very valid in perception. And I say very valid because absolutely your awareness and where your awareness goes very much helps to fuel your reality, right? However, sometimes we really conflate the space between then and now, between what has been and what will be. And though, like if even if that was like a linear metric, right? What has been and what will be, but we're like here, right? When we are really anxious, when we are really anticipatory, when we're really, jaded, and we engage in processes of assumption more so, then those things kind of really conflate. And what has been then is already now, and it's, a rapid cycling of the same. And quite honestly, that's anxiety to a T, really. That's anxiety to a T. That's also kind of self-fulfilling prophecy in a very big way, and also the ways in which I think we can understand. We can perhaps begin to understand that we have a responsibility to cultivate this internal perspective so that it can expand our sights around us, in front of us. Whereas much of what the media engages in is to bombard you with so much information, so much stress, so much, negativity, rage baiting, that it like conflates our experience and very much becomes us. Everybody gets really bogged down with, how much intensity there is to being online, to staying informed, etc., etc. And 100% stay informed. I by no means am the person that's going to be like, just avoid the internet, because that's ignorant. And we can stay informed without it feeling so dense in the body. And that is taking responsibility for the ways in which your body holds information and integrates information, and therefore allows you to process it and expel it. Much like, very literally, like digestion. We consume and we digest and we hold it in our stomach, and then at some point or another we expel, right? The same thing can be happening with, the same thing does happen in the body with emotion and with information. The brain actually does not differentiate between digesting thought, food, or emotion. All of those things are very much processing in the body. Quite honestly, we've come to learn and understand a lot more about what really is a digestive organ in the body. The appendix, for instance, digestive organ, despite there being a substantial amount of appendectomies, many of which aren't even because of complications with the appendix. Likewise, tonsils. How many of us got our fucking tonsils removed? It is, not necessarily digestive, but it is a part of our immune system. Part of our immune system that, many of us got it taken out without there even being a problem. That always makes me real sketch. That always gives me something to question and something to think about. And so we have thus an added responsibility to the ways in which our body is processing this information, integrating this information, and also fertilizing with this information, with any information, so that we can stay present, stay aware, stay up to date, stay engaged, rather than be so doused and drowned and, overly dense with consumption. Like we've all definitely ate so much that like the body can't digest it, so it rejects it, or ate so much that the body is so overworked in digesting that we don't sleep well, or that we'll, like pass out right after eating, fall asleep right after eating, but still not sleep well, struggle to sleep at all, or be in literal pain, heartburn or what have you, be in literal pain because we're so engorged with consumption, and the body is now fighting to digest and to make nutrient of all of what we've taken in. The same thing is happening in the ways in which we engage with social media, the ways in which we engage with news, the ways in which we engage with social atmosphere, the ways in which we engage with information in general, especially like self-help information and astrological information and pop astrology and a lot of it's not that helpful. I'm just gonna be honest. I definitely do my best to like not really fucks with that kind of information, so as to also keep my channeling very clear. But consider that in the ways in which we engage. There's nothing wrong with staying informed and staying up to date, and we have a responsibility to ourselves and a responsibility to our community, a responsibility to the world, really, to stay very present and aware in what's going on. But at the same time, how are we engaging? Are we engaging mindfully, or is the algorithm dictating that for us? Again, old systems, old thoughts. Or are we engaging in any sort of digestive process in that? I feel like most people stay up, scroll until their eyes are like, oh my god, they're gonna bust out of my head, and then they put the phone down and they're like, go to sleep, and then they're like, why aren't I sleeping well? Or why are my dreams so crazy? Because we are not creating space between those experiences. We are not creating space between those experiences to transition. And so this is something that, like, yes, that's a very literal and mundane sort of allegory or example for that, but this applies to everything. And I've noticed this with so many people too, and like including myself, very much so, until I, started breathing more and creating space between any moment in simply breathing. Even, when I read for multiple people, that breath is a vehicle and also a cleansing instrument. 100%. Sound, vibration, smoke and incense is very much a cleansing tool or a vehicle for information, should you bring that conviction and intention to it, rather than just the confidence that it'll do it for you. 100%. Like I have definitely been the person that's like work, 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 especially in times of grief, especially in times of great stress, especially when it's easier to process things physically and literally than it is to process my emotions. Where, you know, I kind of have drowned them out, or, you know, utilized the autopilot of work to get through hard times. But there's no transitional state. There's no transportation of this information in this moment to this moment. And it burns people out. It's burned me out. It's burned friends out. I see friends doing it still. And, you know, the best thing I can do is be kind and supportive, and be a mountain for them to lean on, in the midst of this, and offer seeds of new and you know, positive or potentially positive thoughts to be able to kind of sow that ground with. But the ways in which people will overwork themselves or will over inundate themselves in one way, shape, or form, you know, doing task A and then rushing into task B and then rushing into task C, or, you know, back-to-back calls, or back-to-back this or that, or whatever. You know, even if you've watched like back-to-back episodes, binge watching, do you really retain what happens? No, not really. Anything that I've binge watched in my life, it's like, oh shit, I feel like I don't remember most of it, except like maybe the biggest parts of it, or the ending, you know, or the beginning and the ending. Because we're not digesting that information. Even just taking like a bathroom break in between episodes, or a snack break in between episodes, will help the brain and the body to transition from one moment to the next. 100% for myself in overworking, for friends of mine that, you know, are very much in that realm as well. Like, if I could just tell them one thing, it would be just take a couple of breaths in between. Nobody's asking you to stop. Nobody's asking you to slow down. But can you, for your sake, take just a few breaths in between, so that that information has something stable to carry it over to the next thing. Like, and this is that too. This is the vehicle. This is like a boat, right? And this is mountain 1, mountain 2, and the water in between, right? Or whatever land is in between. And when we rush from object to object to object, we lose a lot of space for identification. But when we are able to simply take a breath, then now we have a vehicle for which to pass information 1 to destination 2, information from destination 1 to destination 2, information from this moment to the next moment, information from who you've been to who you are trying to be. We can utilize something as simple as breath, something as simple as a moment, something as simple as your awareness of that moment, to be a foundational vehicle with which to allow information to pass. This is like a conduit, even in the electrical sense, in vibrational resonatory sense, where it then passes through the barrier, you know, or even like an infection, or medicinally, the ways in which things can pass through the blood-brain barrier, and thus permeate the body. Consider the ways in which thoughts, or emotions, or experiences will also irrigate the system and pass through the blood-brain barrier in the body, when we allow it the vehicle and the space for. And honestly, when we don't, then we're like, oh shit, why am I so exhausted? Why am I so sore? Why am I so da 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 da? Because that process was already happening without your awareness. And so now you've got to play catch up even more so. We thought we were avoiding that, but in reality, there is no avoiding. There is no easy way around it. There is only awareness. There's only presence. And there's only awareness. There's never anything to miss, and there's never anything to catch up to, as long as you're present and aware. But when you avoid, when you escape, when you rush through an assumption, then there will always be something to catch up on. Quite honestly, even, again, take it back to technology, the ways in which people have rushed through expansion with AI and with technology, with AI for coding technology, some studies have also shown, I guess maybe less, more like surveys. Some surveys have also shown that people who work directly with AI the most also find it the least helpful, because then there's going back to troubleshoot, going back to fix things that much more. So there is no rushing. There is no escapism, really. We really just double up on the price to be paid later. And this is something that I, perhaps quite niche, but in like tattooing, there was this whole buzz about people that would get their whole body tattooed, but they would go under anesthesia to get it all done at once. And there was very much this like conversation amongst tattoo industry or piercing industry, modification industry, that was like very upset about that and found it very disgraceful. And for sure, I absolutely do think it's dishonorable to the tradition. It's dishonorable to the roots and the indigeneity of the practice, and what the meaning of that medium really meant. However, while I also feel that way, are they really escaping anything? Are they really bypassing anything? No, because the second they wake up and they're no longer under anesthesia, they have to deal with all of that pain at once. So what they thought was getting out of a couple of hours of gradual pain was actually just really condensed intensity. And quite honestly, with even more risk, because that became less of a trend because it actually cost people their lives. And, likewise with substance use and misuse. We use it to escape pain, we use it to escape, accountability maybe, use it to escape, how intense life can be, how hurtful life can be, but the pain then consolidates into what misuse of substance really can take from you. So there is no avoiding, there is no escaping, and there's no reason to rush through in process of assumption. Again, there is only presence and awareness, and the ways in which we can dilate that single moment so as to see to greater heights, to greater depths, to greater strengths, even an indigenous understanding of Aquarius as the mirror, as the flower. This is a garden, everything growing to great heights or great depths. Some plants root deeper, some plants will grow taller, some plants will spread out more. 100%, it's a different kind of healthy, but it's healthy in all directions. Or the ways in which mirrors can refract light and thus strengthen the beam of light, or the heat then transposed. This is also how we can carry information. Even within the storm or the red bird, storms pass gradually through all of us. We are not alone in our experience of any storm. We just may be in a different time and placement than anybody. Not the pain that will kill you, but your attempts to escape it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Gosh, thank you so much for that. That is likewise just as potent as your words are often, my friend. And the understanding of the red bird transfers messages from land to sky and from this world to the next. This is very much what any given red bird is, like be it seeing cardinals or seeing unique birds of unique colors or potent colors that draw your attention. It's drawing you to presence and awareness, insight. That spirit of that animal draws you to presence and awareness in that sight, but also allows for messages to be passed in between realms. That's why when we see certain animals or certain, birds or what have you, we're like, oh, that reminds me of somebody that I lost. Oh, that reminds me of somebody that I loved. That's a sign that this person is still watching me, still with me. That's a sign that my ancestors are greeting me, because they're transferring these messages and these frequencies beyond the physical barrier. And so this is, I think, very much a time where those barriers are going, whatever barriers we have up are cracking, and that's a good thing. Whatever dams we have up are cracking, and that's a good thing. Let them crack, let them fall away, because you will be able to build something stronger that can hold your genuineness and your potency and your currency in a much more valued way, in a greater capacity, with a greater capacitor, rather than short-circuiting or frying the system. Oh wow, that's funny. I haven't even pulled a card yet. That was all from fucking feeling. Jesus. See, all you need is a breath. Sometimes you don't even need cards. Three of Wands inverted, Three of Pentacles inverted. Interesting. More fire, more earth. Desire and reflection. Internal flame to illuminated projection. Three of Wands and Three of Pentacles. Both of these are very creative cards. But the Three of Wands, I think, is even this space in between portals, in between doorways and portals, and is intersected by these wands, right? So it's sort of like meat on a skewer, or like hanging in the axis. There are nodes shifting, very much so. And so perhaps the axis that we are to embrace is of a totally different measurement and metric. And that is a new doorway altogether, a new portal altogether, a new opportunity altogether that perhaps we have not previously believed in or entertained. This is also, often with threes, it's cyclical processes. It's very much a vital framework, cellularly, atomically, and macroscopically. But also, often is like, odds are too much or not enough. There's not an imbalance per se, but it is an opportunity to sort of take inventory. Again, that digestive process is like taking inventory of what we've consumed, right? And being able to integrate or fertilize. That is the offering. To integrate is to offer it to synthesis, to offer it to the psyche, to offer it to greater perspective of mind, or to let go of, which offers it as fertilizer to whatever lands we are on, or offer it as, wisdom to the other. This is why elders have great wisdom. This is also why the youth has great wisdom, because their experiences integrated also can be a wise lesson for those that have not yet experienced that. And that is that offering of the third wand. That is the offering of the third light. That is shedding light on what will continue or persist from any given process. Light of perspective, light of mind. Light of perspective and light of mind. And where we feel blocked is because we are not seeing fully. Where we feel like this third is perhaps more of like a do not enter, do not pass go situation, is very much offer that to the mind, not just the mind, offer that to the consciousness, offer that to the psyche, and allow for it to expand your perspective so that you're not just looking at it from this one overwhelmed point of view where it's like, this is all I can focus on. I can't think about anything else. And we've all been there when, like, problems in relationships, problems with friends, problems with family, where it's like, I can't focus because this is all I can think about. Cool, fair. That shit happens. However, let this not be a blockage. Allow yourself not to recede. You don't have to step back. You don't have to, like, recede and wave a white flag. You do have to get to higher ground, get to different ground, a different elevation of self, I suppose, so as to be able to see in 360 degrees, be able to see all around, be able to illuminate all around, like, very literally, the consciousness as a torch, the consciousness as a light. A torch or a flashlight beams in one direction, but when you use your conscious awareness and your perception as that beam of light, as that torch, then you have illumination in all directions, rather than spotlight. And when it comes to, overwhelm, anxiety, when it comes to consumption, even, consumption of information, or the ways in which we can sort of zero in interest, that is very spotlighted. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with, being hyper interested in something. However, you got to come up to breathe every once in a while, for sure. I've been there too, where I, like, zero in on a topic and I'm like, information, research, writing notes, and gotta come up for air. And sure enough, when I do, there's always something else attached to it. There's always something else that's like, okay, I was researching neurological connections, and then I come up for air and I get to see it in a plant spirit, or an animal spirit that I interacted with, that I'm like, ooh, I've never seen that before. Let me see what that means. Oh, it kind of means the same thing as this. Wow, everything's connected. Or, come up from research and somebody offers you something else to read, and it's like, oh, wow, this is actually, like, hand in hand with what I was doing and what I was dealing with, only from a different perspective. And we're able to then sort of flesh out this new system in a greater way, and give it stronger bones and give it more vital processes. The Three of Pentacles is exactly that fleshing out and that creation. That is when we have not just the coding, not just the bones and the framework or the blueprint, but when we give life, when we breathe life into any creation, into any idea, because that is a form of creation. Just your thought and your thinking is a form of creation, and when you breathe life into that by maintaining it for any given amount of time, ideally more than 2 or 3 seconds. What is it? 2.5 seconds is human attention span. 5 seconds is goldfish attention span, and in various occult texts they would say, at least 17 seconds, if not more. This is why I love mantra, because there's a lot more than 17 seconds in 108 repetitions of any given mantra. And why meditation exists far beyond just the space of any single meditation, but where meditation pours out in that moment into everything. And if you see, I love this card because it's so it's so detail oriented. There's like all these like almost like little vibrations in the ether all around it, where this 3 and upright, and he's got this like carving tools, and there's all of this energy around him, and then there's this cyclical process of intake, digestion, output, intake, digestion, output, intake, digestion, output, that becomes the flow, state of creativity. And in so many ways that's mental, yes, a thought forms, and then a feeling is added to it, fuels that, and then we take some sort of embodied action with that, and driven by that feeling. This is where it's not confidence, it is conviction. Confidence isn't even a part of that metric or that system or that platonic framework, which is why it's so fragile. because it's not even a foundational principle of this kind of flow state framework, of this kind of mathematical, Platonic conception of the ways in which we breathe life into an idea, or in the ways in which we give life, consistent life, to memories. The expression of like this, thing lives in my brain rent free is because it is the moment that you saw it or felt it or heard it, the moment you saw it or heard it, the feeling that was attached to it, and the like willingness to engage with it or to remember it cyclically. And this is how like reticular activating circuit of brain, of memory, of sensory processing reoccurs and reoccurs and reoccurs in the mind. 100%, like even very literally, like olfactory system, your sense of taste, your sense of smell, or your sense of smell and your sense of taste. This is why the CIA studies it so much, because those are linked. So you already kind of like uh, teleport into these stable points, and thus it activates a memory. And so we sort of have this rapid reoccurrence, thus happening again, which is why incense or scent in general is so stimulating to the memory. And so consider that too. If you're in a place of building new patterns, building new habits, or reprogramming your memory, never underestimate the sense of smell. And never underestimate the potency of the cells in your saliva that also facilitate that framework in a very real way. It feeds every cell in your body just from that framework. And on an atomic scale, that is every cell, because you have nucleus, you have positive, you have negative, and thus the constant charge, the constant oscillating of any given cell. Damn. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Gosh. Oof. Even the light and the luminescence behind it is like eyes peering through. And also the trees themselves are bonding, connecting, building bridges, much like we talked about in the transfer of energy and the transfer of knowledge in this. And underneath, it looks like it's kind of got like a little skirt on underneath, but it's like background of stars, I think. Could be both. It's a little bit of everything. That's the beautiful thing about imagery and the story that it tells, the framework that it builds, and the ways in which our imagination can wrap around these things. This is also 100% what most tarot how-to classes fucking miss, because they're teaching you how to read and regurgitate the symbol as it is, rather than to allow your ingenuity and imagination to interpret that for you. 100%, I think that ties directly back to the ways in which feeling influences dreaming and the ways in which dreaming can influence reality through that same feeling, through that very same feeling. And so nothing is impossible, nothing is implausible. And the two states, dreaming and awake, are not that different. So your presence and your awareness, trained in both waking, will help you dream, and trained in dreaming will help you live. Help you leave an impression. Help you to leave an imprint that you can be proud of. That will remind you who you are and where you've been and where you're going. And great love and in perfect trust. Like it just makes me think of like, how people will carve so and so is here, or like A loves B. That is something that we're constantly etching into our hearts. That is something that we are constantly etching into our hearts. But more often than not, we're etching in doubt. We're etching in, you could never, this is not you, blah, 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 kind of things. Or, but mom said, and dad said, whatever it was. Mom said you're fat. Dad said you're ugly. kind of thing. Those aren't the etchings that are serving us. Those are old thoughts and outdated systems. This new operating system. Now that you know what that flow can look like, what will you etch into your heart? Because that is where the river of conviction flows. And where confidence isn't even needed or necessary. Because the eminence of that conviction will touch everything. And so there's no need to lust for things or people or experiences, because just that inner flame, just that inner love will permeate everything. This is how you be larger than life. This is how we embrace the Leo of a lifetime. This is how this is what fulfillment really is. In that eminence of presence and awareness. And for all that people try to invoke spirits and energies and this and that and what have you, classes and courses on invoking Lilith and da 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 da. They never ever ever talk about evoking, and that is where it becomes embodied, where you're no longer just a feeble human body holding all of this energy, leading you to madness. You are a viscous and ethereal galactic thing, cosmic thing, a resonator that rings through everything. Like a potent drum that you can hear from miles away. Let that be your heart instead. Wow, wow, wow. This is very exciting. It's very exciting. It's very transformative. It's very powerful. I do think that will also be some growth spurts as well as some uncomfortable growth spurts. Like puberty. Not all of it's real comfortable, but it is real exciting. And we're then allowed to see ourselves in a different light. And it takes some adjusting too, when the voice cracks or goes deeper or the body is shaped differently. Like, it takes us a minute, to be like, whoa, I had no idea that this is what I'd look like. Look at like old photos of you from like pre-puberty or pre-second puberty, and just revel it, just how much you were able to step into yourself, and how much you maybe could have never dreamed that you are who you are and just the way you are. But you had to have faith in the process. And that you also perhaps struggled with other people's faith in the process. We all kind of got pushback from family or friends going through puberty or second puberty because they could not wrap their minds around possibility. They were too attached to what has been, as if it should always remain, and that is not the case. So don't be that to you. Don't be that to you this time either. Embrace possibility. There's potent magic in that alone. Liliste Atsenata. Happy new moon. Truly, truly. Truly. Wow. Wow. Okay. Okay. We talk a lot about integration. So, of course, we will have to integrate with the breath. Yes, my friends? In which case, many of you have done this with me before. It is the cycle of harmonies, in which case, all breaths are also attributed to an element, and an element has a breath. And so we use the breath as a vehicle to cleanse all elements, to unite all elements, like calling the corners in any given magical practice, and to clear a path within and so without, for greater movement forward. Yes, do not deny yourself a truer future because you are holding firm to lies of the past. Instead, that is a weight upon you like shackles in the sea. In the cycle of harmonies, a fire breath is in through the mouth and out through the nose. And earth breath, and we do that 3 times. An earth breath is in through the nose and out through the nose. We do that 3 times. An air breath is in through the mouth and out through the mouth, but with your tongue out, so as to lift the diaphragm and unify the breath from root to crown in the space of the heart. And in a water breath, after doing the air 3 times, a water breath is in through the nose and out through the mouth. Preferably for twice as long, if not longer, but gently and patiently nonetheless. That does give us 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12. And because we do not fucks with the false mathematics of internal implosion within 12-sign astrology, and because we seek greater resonance and resolve, the 13th will be in through the nose, so as to prepare the body for a hum or an aum, utilizing that vibration to encompass and align all frequencies and all elements. In which case, an aum comes from the lowest point you can find on your belly. I like to imagine like a good palm's distance from my belly button, or if you were to like cup the very bottom of your belly just above your pubic bone, kind of there. And just imagine feeling that vibration sort of scooping that space, and go ah, and the ooh part is then scooping and upwards into the heart space. But much like the thyroid glands that exist underneath the throat, we expand the heart chakra horizontally and in all directions before we raise the frequency up into the mouth. There are 3 chakras in the roof of your mouth that are also pleasure centers, and then raising the frequency perhaps even into your eyes, because the nervous system it will also very much be awakened from the fire breath and lively and shining in that. And the perhaps longer you can expel that breath, or you can hold that tone, then the can reach the crown and pour out kind of like a water fountain, a toroidal vortex of regenerative frequency, is the ultimate goal. It's not just to, gosh, and this is like pet peeve of mine with like Western yoga classes, is they kind of just like, it starts in the chest and it's like just a race toward the crown and like straight through, which isn't regenerative. That's not utilizing your energy or your tone or your frequency to thus fill the body again or to offer it to the earth. It's very much like all drive and all expansion with no grounding, no firmness in the stance, no stable framework with which to grow. So, and an it starts from the root of the belly, and then you rise. Hold it for as long as you can. The more you practice it, the more that you'll surprise yourself, my friend. And so, we integrate all that we have learned, and perhaps even in finding and directing the fire, simply with these breaths. Just notice your breath as it is, first and foremost, without judgment, without anticipation, without any need to dictate or direct it. Inhale, gently sipping the air through the mouth, feeling the belly grow, the space between the hips fill, and exhaling through the nose, feeling that breath rise to the space behind the eyes, igniting and awakening your nerves. Inhaling through the mouth, sipping the air in, building the flame wide between the hips, and exhaling through the nose, feeling that flame, that warmth rise into the space behind the eyes, illuminating new thought, new awareness. Inhaling through the mouth, feeling the hips widen and fill, and exhaling through the nose, feeling that breath rise to the eyes, feeling the nerves ignite, giving new light to new awareness. Inhaling through the nose, feeling breath pass evenly through both nostrils, through the throat, softening the jaw and the shoulders. And exhaling through the nose, feeling the breath surround the heart as it descends into the belly, into the hips, into the thighs, grounding, nourishing. Inhaling through the nose, evenly, patiently, feeling the sensation of both nostrils equally. And exhaling through the nose, feeling the breath descend down, unobstructed through the central channel of the body, greeting the heart, and finding home in the belly, in the root. Inhaling through the nose, feeling breath pass evenly, inviting and accepting air into the open corridor of your central channel, and exhaling through the nose, feeling unobstructed breath descend into the body like grounding, like nourishment. Inhaling through the mouth, sipping the air in, feeling the coolness against the warmth of your tongue, of your natural inner fire. Sweeping it across your mind, drawing the tongue out to exhale. Feeling the diaphragm rise. The belly button meets the spine and unites the breath in the heart. Inhaling through the mouth, sweeping that breath across the back of your mind, clearing any doubt or preconceived notion, and drawing the tongue out to exhale. Feeling the breath and diaphragm rise to meet the mind, united in the space where the heart bridges the gap. Inhaling through the mouth, sweeping breath and air inviting it in for new perspectives in an open space, drawing the tongue out to exhale. Clearing the central channel of any remaining debris as the heart swells, uniting the root and the crown in that space. Inhaling through the nose now, feeling air pass gently and evenly through both nostrils, softening the cheeks, softening the jaw, softening the space between your shoulders. And exhaling through the mouth, gently, patiently, clearing a path before you as you've cleared a path within you. Inhaling through the nose, inviting breath in, feeling it irrigate the system and your toes and your fingers, and exhaling through the mouth, releasing any remaining blockages or tension in the bones or the joints, freeing up more space for new thoughts, new memory, new becoming. Inhaling through the nose, feeling the ample space, the vast space within you as breath touches every corner and passes through every corridor. And exhaling through the mouth, gently, patiently, and for as long as you can, expanding your horizons with your breath as you do. As we feel the body soften, we inhale through the nose one more time to prepare the body for a hum or an om. Like an ultrasonic shaking off debris, or like cymatics vibrating all cells into harmony. Just allow your mind to wrap around your presence, your awareness, feeling the sensation of vibration, and it's rippling through the vast waters of your body and the harmony of all elements. Because land back, yes, to the land that we're on, but land back also means that we are in stewardship of the elements within us as well, that we control our consciousness, that no other media or outside authority has any reign over our heart, over our mind, or over our body. How are we feeling? I hope really beautifully. I hope really well. Thank you for spending so much of your beautiful late night, moonlit hours with me on this journey, with spirit in this conversation. and with the planets in their alignment. Wato. Thank you from my heart. I appreciate you very much. I appreciate you very much for being here, for your presence, your awareness, for sharing space. And I wish you many, many blessings. Many blessings to you, my friend. Hell yeah, we control our consciousness. The land will be returned to those who respect it, to those who can honor it. And likewise, our awareness, our consciousness, for all of the distractions, will return home to our heart when we honor and respect its power and its presence. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. With that being said, my friends, I will leave you to bask in the ambience, to revel in the resonance of this frequency. Perhaps grab some water. If you had water already, then it was absolutely listening and on the journey with us. Please savor every sip, and also trust that it is a helpful integrator in passing this information to every cell in your body. Much more than just hydration, but in like insemination and integration in so many ways. So never underestimate the power of your water. And perhaps what a great time on a new moon to take a blank page and to dream upon it. Especially those things that you didn't think were possible. Keep it. Because we've seen many instances now where those mere journal entries were actually modes of activation of spell and prayer. It's a potent night. Make magic with it. Mwah. Atake ute, tanatake. Beloved, until next time.